Here at the Proximity Podcast, we live in the dangerous middle, holding these tensions in love, full of grace and truth. This podcast should be seen both as a conversation and a connection with our friends and neighbors to talk about the things that matter most. Not every view that is shared on the Proximity Podcast is the opinion or the value of Mission Church. And today we have a chance to jump into the lost art of reaching in this episode. And I want to introduce to everyone my friend, Scott Nelson. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Hey, let's take a moment. And oftentimes when we step into a conversation like this, where we're talking about the lost art of reaching, we're going to talk a little bit about sharing our faith or engaging with people far from God or things like that. But I always want to give people context.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do and what brought you to Minnesota.
Okay. I am a church planter. I planted a church in California about 15 years ago, and that church grew. We planted a church, started helping out with the denomination. I'm in the Evangelical Covenant Church.
Yep.
And then they asked me if I'd be willing to come to the Midwest, where I'd lived before. I was a youth pastor in Southern California, where I grew up, Chicago, and Minnesota. And they asked if I'd be willing to come here and just kind of help get church planting going, moving. They already had a lot of good track record with that. But I also serve as an associate superintendent, which is helping just encourage pastors, develop leaders. And it's kind of fun seeing those two come together about how we encourage pastors, but also help them see the mission of God.
That's so good. I stalk you on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm always encouraged by how you're cheering on other leaders, other communities, small, big, whatever it is, communities. You're in every area of this region and cheering them on for what they do. And just transparently, I know that you were in Plymouth, Minnesota for a season.
Yeah.
We're both big fans of Plymouth Covenant.
Yes.
And so my little stint with the Covenant was a real encouragement because I got excited around some of the next steps that the denomination was doing. Not growing up denominational, it was a learning experience for me. But the church planting avenue was one of the pieces, and some of the voices and names in the Evangelical Covenant, whether it's Pastor Ephraim Smith or Pastor Edwin Williams or Mark Stromberg, or I can introduce several names that people that were really impactful on me over the years. But I just am so grateful for who you are. And I'm glad we got you to come back to Minnesota because we are certainly better for it. So let's take a deep dive. We want to talk about this lost art of reaching.
Yeah.
And this would seem odd because the church is all about reaching people far from God. It's the one organization that really exists for those who aren't a part of it. And yet we live in a world that in some ways has kind of seen the church grow, seen the church flourish, and then it's kind of settled in, and some would say we have mission drift or whatever it may be. But as you're going around and you're getting a chance to shake hands, see people preach in a variety of pulpits, what are some of the things that you're recognizing currently in the state of the church in the Great Midwest right now?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to what you just said, that's the goal of the church. I don't know if everyone would say that.
Really?
I mean, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think Jesus makes it very clear.
Yeah.
Come, I will make you fishers of men and women.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we say, no, you won't.
Yeah.
Like I'm hurting, I'm struggling. Church is for me to get the needs I need met.
Yeah.
And then even for the churches that do say that, and I think a lot of our churches do, like, we are existing to help other people. But even when we're helping, we've kind of lost the art of reaching.
Okay.
So it's evangelism's kind of a bad word. You're seeing stats about younger people saying evangelism is wrong.
Okay.
And so there's this sense of like, we're here to help people with their physical needs, but not their spiritual needs, even though we know how important that is. Yeah. So the biggest thing I've seen is just churches are sometimes then going, how do we do this? The world's changed. Yeah. It always changes. And it's almost like we need to constantly recognize that we are on a mission field. Mm-hmm. And if you were doing a trip overseas, going to a different culture, you would come in with a little more curiosity. You would see something that was different and hopefully not say, well, my way is right, your way is wrong. You would say, why do you do it that way? Yeah. And so a lot of what I'm encouraging people to do as they engage with the mission of God in their own context is to know that The United States is the 4th largest unreached country in the world.
Okay, say that again because people are going to be wanting to rewind this, so to speak.
The United States is the 4th largest mission field in the world.
Okay.
By unreached people who are not church and not Christian. And so if you kind of come in by saying like, oh, I'm not in a church culture. I'm in an unchurched culture that has changed and is constantly changing. So if I can come in with some cultural curiosity and actually go, instead of my way is right or I'm the only right way, but instead of going, the gospel can translate into different, the gospel never changes.
Right.
Good news is always the same, but how it contextualizes changes. So when Jesus came to earth, he dressed like a 1st century Galilean Jew. Yeah. And if he came to our context, he would dress differently. He would speak differently. He lived in that context. Yeah. So we want to be able to do the same thing. That's some of the. So it really starts with a listening and a curiosity coming into a place. And I think for a lot of Christians, since we've lived through the change, we're angry about the change, and then the people we're trying to reach are often viewed as enemies rather than lost sheep.
Wow. So obviously now we're starting to point to like Luke chapter 15. We're talking about, the paradigms of the parables of the lost coin, the lost sheep, the lost son. And we're reminded that, Jesus left the 99 for the one. And it wasn't just Jesus' job, but it was Jesus' embodiment that he was reminding us, no, this is part of the mission, because Jesus came to seek and save that was lost and serve and give his life as a ransom for many. We know that about the core of Jesus, and we're trying to be like Jesus. I'm intrigued a little bit around some generations talking about how evangelism is wrong, because it seems like when we read Scripture, we can't get past the calling of going and making disciples, but it's almost like the pendulum has swung to more of this issue of what people have probably attributed, I think it's Francis of Assisi, to when necessary, use words, whatever that phrase is, So talk about this, just a little more of a nuance in the region, because you live in the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul region. Yeah. You drive to the farthest regions of the upper Midwest. So you're in farm town, you're in country, you're in suburb, you're in city. Where do you most find churches, not necessarily regionally, but what are the kind of elements that you do find in churches that are on mission or are excited about reaching their neighbor, and you see it happening regularly? What are some markers there that you can recognize of health?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is actually taking the mission seriously. So the old joke, it's the Great Commission, not the Great Suggestion.
Yeah.
So to actually say, we are going to do this, and this is going to be part of even how we disciple people. So in much of our discipleship in America, I believe, is that evangelism or feeling like you're sent as a Christian is maybe the last step that you may never get to. It's only for super Christians.
Right.
Rather than, no, it's part of every step that you grow better at as you go along. Yeah. It's not like we say, the last step of my maturity as a Christian is I'll start reading the Bible. Mm-hmm. We go, no, I read it in step 1 and step 2 and step 3, but I actually learn more as I go along. Mm-hmm. I get deeper in it as I go along. And I think a lot of us in America, we've kind of just said that's only for certain people. But for Jesus, it was the first thing, it was the middle thing, it was the last thing. So for those churches, I am seeing that it's more normalized. In the Southern Hemisphere, Christianity's grown 5,000% in the last 100 years. And I think some of that is just because it's normal to say, well, disciples make disciples. Mm-hmm. Christians are sent people. Jesus said, as the Father sent me, so I send you. Mm-hmm. That's just part of who we are. Yeah. It's just normal for churches to start churches and Christians to reach Christians. And in those churches that are healthy and mission driven, that's kind of what I'm seeing is there's energy put into it. The framework is correct. This is not at the detriment of your inner life. In fact, there's things you can't learn about depending on Jesus and getting close to Jesus and praying until you're actually out on the mission. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You can't understand Jesus until you're walking the mission of Jesus.
I agree with
those
you.
go together.
Yeah.
And it's not one instead of the other. They go at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I'm seeing. And it's so different.
Yeah.
You know, a rural church that's living, healthy, dynamic, impacting their town is going to be different than suburban, urban, different languages, immigrant church. They're all going to be very different, but there is sort of here are the non-negotiables, right? Jesus is Lord. He's the salvation for our sins. And then we're going to go out and reach people with that good news. And I do think there is a passion to know that if you serve people without actually offering them the peace of Jesus, that's going to feel very superficial over time.
Yeah.
Because what our world is really longing for is peace and true connection. Yeah. And I think it doesn't quite work out when we as Christians don't believe our own Bible. Yeah. When we go, well, actually, I just want to serve your physical needs. Yeah. Because I don't want to actually give you the eternal things that are really going to make a difference, which is exactly what our world is longing for. Yeah. So in some ways, the non-church world wants the church to act more spiritual. Yeah. Yeah. Not to ignore the physical, but like give me what it is you say you believe in. Yeah. And that really becomes just truly good news for people.
That's encouraging. I think, it's part of just a tweak for many churches from going from accidental to intentional about their dynamic. Yeah. We may want to pack a truck, or we may want to have a food shelf, or we may want to, whatever it is, but it's the proximity of relationship, authenticity, and vulnerability that affords an engagement. But it feels like we're kind of starting to circle around a core characteristic that I think is in Christians' lives that, obviously Jesus embodied around compassion. And so when we think about compassion for the local church, if you have compassion, you're not going to be apathetic. If you have compassion, you're not going to be passive. If you have compassion, you're going to not only carry both the weight, but step into some of these environments. So talk to me a little bit, because I think if I know you well, compassion is kind of core to what you believe about the lost art of reaching. So take it from here for a little bit.
Yeah, I did some study in the Gospels, and that word, the verb compassion, literally means like a twisting of your insides. Yep. Is used basically completely connected to Jesus, whether it's in the parables or in just his life. And it really starts with seeing. Yeah. And seeing people. And it's funny because sometimes we're both in the church planting world, and we love that world. And sometimes that world is way too strategic. Yeah. It's just strategy. Yeah. And that's super helpful. But what it means is some churches that aren't very strategic, or they're led by people who are more shepherd or chaplain oriented, they're like, I don't know how that works for me. Yeah. And one of the things we've been trying to say is that it really starts with compassion, having a heart for the harvest and the people in the harvest, and having a heart for lost people the way God does. A heart that actually can go all the way into sacrifice. Basically embodying what Jesus did. And we're supposed to be following that example. So compassion's so huge. And if we actually go, look, if it was my kid that was lost, what would I do? Yeah. Yeah. And to go, well, that's how God feels about people. Yeah. And so that, I believe, invites a whole new group of people to the table of saying, okay, so what if we acted not like they were those people, but they're God's children who've been lost? Yeah. And that God created them, and he loved them, and he literally, like Psalm says, knit them together in the womb and knows the hairs on their head. Like, what if we actually saw like that? And the hard thing is that's really hard on our hearts, which is why I think we put up the wall and say we don't want to do that. And I would just say the part of the reason we have community and we have the Lord is that we go, this is going to hurt. Yeah. But I'm going to hurt. Yeah. But I'm going to then share that hurt with, the people who support me. Yeah. The support I have in my life. And I'm going to really pour that out to the Lord every single day of like, God, help me to see people. The Surgeon General very recently said 50% of Americans have medical grade loneliness. Loneliness so acute, 50%, that it actually shortens your lifespan, changes your physiology, like changes the way your heart works. The report said it's as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes per day. And that's 50% of Americans.
Wow.
So if we go like, in church, we actually are pretty good at forming relationships with each other, listening for each other, praying for each other. If you can just take some of those skills that you've learned in small groups pretty much your whole life and then go, most people outside of church have never experienced that.
Yeah.
They might have someone they do coffee with, but it's going to be different.
Yeah.
And you can actually, instead of giving them a whole bunch of advice or preaching at them, just listen with empathy and then pray for them.
Yeah.
Or invite them to come eat. And those sort of things in proximity.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to do evangelism.
Yeah.
Because there's a narrow definition of what evangelism is, which means I need to sit and give people a bunch of answers or help them feel worse about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't want to do that.
Right.
And I don't think God's asked us to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right on with the relational aspect being the first and foremost calling card. Your stat by the Surgeon General, that's mind-blowing, but it only emphasizes how important it is for congregations not just to be welcoming, but to be engaging, to have a proximity where they step forward towards the person that's new, lost. I mean, I'll just say that I think there are many churches currently that are trying to find some of the secret sauce of they want to change their community. But the greatest conflict, accidentally, I don't believe it's intentional, is their inward focused or their long-term relationships that have somehow got them huddled in and not looking out to the world around them. And so I know the Covenant as a denomination has worked very hard to help give some practical tools to help people think first and foremost about what missional living looks like. I believe I've heard Dave and John Ferguson promote this. I've heard of whether it's a B.L.E.S.S acronym or B.L.E.S.S acronym. You guys chose kind of a B.L.E.S.S acronym. Can you talk a little bit about how you've encouraged, challenged, because these are practical ways that anybody who has a relationship with Jesus could or should be able to start to engage their neighbor?
Yeah, we'll go over the acronym quick, and then I'll share some thoughts along the way. So it's begin with prayer.
Yeah.
Listen with care.
Yeah.
Eat together. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Share your serve needs, and then share your story. And I think along the way, you can be inviting people into things that you're doing together with friends or church friends, or inviting them to come to church.
Yeah.
But even starting with the begin with prayer. Yeah. It is shocking to me if I give people a challenge, and we do have a challenge going on, many denominations do, of set an alarm, pray at 10:02, Luke 10:2, harvest is plentiful, workers are few. Pray that every day. And I'll say that to people. We have stickers that we've made, and people are like, yes, that's great, give me a sticker. And I'll ask them a month later, have you been praying that? And they go, no. I've even said to pastors, can you just every day ask for God to interrupt you along the day, just to help someone, just to bless someone? Yeah. And they go, yeah. Don't do it. Don't start a staff. What if you started every staff meeting? What if you started your church service? Yeah. And that, I think, is meant to be a window into our souls of going, I'm struggling to even pray for a minute or two for lost people. So if I can't, the way we pray kind of reveals our heart and moves our hearts. Yeah. I also think it makes a big difference with the Lord. Oh yeah. But if we're struggling to even pray it, so I think that's the first thing, to really say, how can I pray this? And if I'm not, why am I not? I say I want my world to change. Well, why can't I give a couple minutes a day? And just to not have that be shame, but have it be a little bit of conviction of, okay, I actually need to find a way to do this. I set an alarm on my phone just so it's just there, and I stop whatever I'm doing. Yeah. Listen with care, I think, is such a huge thing. We've talked about listening already. Yeah. Listening in a world that is lonely, just listening is a form of evangelism. Yeah. Just actually listening with empathy, not advice, not telling you what to do, but just listening. Yeah. Many of us grew up kind of with the image in our head that, God's over here and lost people are over here. Yeah. And I understand where that comes from. I understand that sin separates us from God. But when we read the Gospels, Jesus wasn't over here and sinners weren't here. Right. Jesus actually walks with sinners. Yeah. And he looks at them and he sees them and he helps them. Yeah. And if we kind of have the analogy of, I'm not bringing Jesus to people. Jesus is already talking to lost people. Yeah. He's asking me, will you join in this conversation? And if I'm a follower of Jesus, then I'm going to join in the conversation he's having with every single person in my town. As much as I can. I can't join with everybody.
Right.
Eating together, again, hallelujah, that one's great. But it's actually pretty hard for people because we kind of close our circles. You go to the Gospels, you see Jesus eating with strangers. Right? And just it takes a little bit of time to get there, but I've seen some people really good at this, at saying, hey, I'm going to invite a couple people from church and a couple people from work or from my kids' softball or whatever, and we're actually going to come together and just eat and play games. And we're not going to have a whole Bible study. We're just going to see what happens. I just got the people in the room together, or just that art of coffee. But you know what I've even found is after church, it's hard for people just to invite other people out just for coffee. So we want to say, we have all these great connections, but as we continue to make them a little bit deeper, I think it's going to help our world. Our world is more connected than ever. But the level of connection is more superficial. So we actually don't have proximity. If we live into proximity and just say, I'm able to do this with people in my life, it can make a huge difference. And I see Jesus doing that. And then, of course, sharing your story and serving people's needs. I actually think the church is pretty strong in serving people's needs. We've actually done a really good job of that. We just need to add, in addition to serving needs. So I don't want to get rid of that. I just want to add in, making sure we're sharing the good news. And the last thing I'll say about sharing your story is, it's given me a lot of peace to go into that word witness. Right? That Jesus is really the one on trial, not me. Right? People are evaluating, what do I think about Jesus? And it's great to know that I don't have to be Jesus's defense attorney. And sometimes I've tried. And sometimes I felt like I've won the case. And I don't. Like when I win the case, I usually lose the person. Right? I don't have to be a prosecuting attorney. I don't have to be the judge. I don't have to be the jury. I just need to be a witness. But if the witnesses go silent, the case is lost.
It's true.
So if I can just be a witness and go, God, how can I experience you and your goodness each day? How does that make sense in this context? If people are lonely, how can I share about the connection that comes from Christ and comes from his people? Highs and lows. Church isn't perfect, right? But how can I share about that? If people are looking for meaning, how can I share that I get to give myself to a cause bigger than myself? People are looking for joy. How can I talk about the struggle of following Christ, but the joy that it brings? That's a witness. And people can take it, believe it, not. But my job isn't to make them believe. My job is to share my story. That's just given me a lot of freedom.
Well, there's a lot of confidence in that, and I think that the conversation continues to come back to just an authentic, vulnerable posture makes reaching, I'll say natural, but it's really the supernatural process of it, because our authenticity can oftentimes lead to ourself and not to who God has created us to be. Our vulnerability can make us protective of who we are and not open to where God may take some opportunities. So you've really been a godsend on the conversation around just compassion and even around some practices for the local church. Can you tell me a little bit, because you did plant in Northern California, is that right? And tell me a little bit about that, and then can you shift a little bit to what you learned there and what you're starting to see here? Because if I was just to kind of candidly speak, sometimes in the United States, we experience what the coasts have learned or experienced, we experience 5 or 10 years later. Trends, it can be ideology, it can be a variety of things. But the church itself really tends to follow that traction as well. So talk to me a little bit about your experience there, kind of the church planting values that you had, and then talk about what you're seeing here and what might actually catalyze or encourage us in where we are today.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing, and what I did some research on, was clergy are going to continue to need more and more support, something I call supply lines. So this sense of isolation and loneliness is affecting clergy even more. So we need people in that inner circle, Some of them will be in church, some of them won't. But getting a group of friends, getting a group of people who understand, people who kind of sit in the same chair as you do, but it also could be spiritual directors and therapists and people like that, people who really understand. So more and more support. There's sometimes you look at a bridge and you go, I would never drive my car across that.
Right. Yeah.
And there's other times you're like, that bridge can hold hundreds of cars. And the difference we look at and we know is the support system.
Totally.
So how do you strengthen a bridge to carry more weight? It's you increase the support. But with so many of our clergy, we're resistant. We provide support to others, but we're resistant to receive support.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the big things I've been encouraging people is God actually wants to put more on your plate.
Yeah.
But he wants it to feel like less. And the way of doing that is by having a lot more joy and connection with other people.
Wow.
And so as you get more support, you're actually able to carry more of what God's calling us to do. And I think that's one of the reasons many of our churches are struggling is because the clergy themselves, they need to kind of be empowered to go reach that support. The other thing I've seen on the coast is it's just been kind of de-churched for a long time.
Okay.
And some churches have then gone into full kind of reactive enclave mode of we're just going to separate ourselves completely from this culture. But most have just accepted we live in a de-churched, but still Christians have a role and a voice in that. We're just not the only role or the only voice. And so you learn how to have a voice amongst others. And it's just much more of an integrated, not, if you're talking about your schools or your workplaces or the way your town works or functions, civics, of just, look, we're one voice among many. How do we have a good voice? How can we be good citizens, good workers? And I think that's a huge thing. And there's also a lot more, we got to find a way to do coalitions and help our churches become more multi-ethnic.
That makes sense.
The West Coast is just more Asian, more Latino. And so how do we find ways of actually doing that, training up leaders? And so I think those things are going to continue to happen in the Midwest, in the upper Midwest.
Yeah.
There is at times a sense of, well, they left our churches and that's their fault. We'll be here when they come back.
Yeah.
Instead of Luke 15, which you
Right.
talked about, which is Jesus kind of gives us a posture shift,
Yeah.
which is, of course, we wait for people to come back, but we pursue.
Yeah.
And we just say, look, if we're honest about what we're seeing in the statistics and in the conversations, we can accept reality.
Yeah.
We don't have to always be living in the past. We can go, this is where we're at. How do we actually try to make our world a better place from this point forward, loving our neighbors as ourselves? Yeah. And I think that can make a huge difference, both in terms of ethnic diversity, as we just kind of keep empowering God's people to do God's work, and in terms of accepting we don't have to keep having the Christian, non-Christian divide.
Yeah.
We can say, yes, we need fellowship,
Right.
but we're going to be a blessing to the world.
Yeah.
The call to Abraham.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
You are going to be a blessing to the world. And it's convicting. I'll end this little part with just a conviction, and this one might be a little too harsh. But, Jesus said when he saw the lost, they looked like sheep without a shepherd.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as Christians, I feel this sometimes too, we look at the world and we're like, what are you doing? What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Jesus said that. They looked confused and helpless or harassed
Yeah.
and downcast, depends on the translation. But Jesus said it looked like sheep without a shepherd.
Yeah.
And then in Ezekiel 34 is God's complaint about the shepherds who've abandoned the sheep. And so God's anger in that chapter, and you can decide if it applies to us or not, is not at the sheep.
Yeah.
It's at the shepherds.
Yeah.
And so if we all as Christians, 1 Peter, if we're the priests, if we're the blessing to the world, we can't abandon the sheep, even when they're lost and confused and helpless and downcast and doing things that lost sheep do.
Yeah.
We have to continue shepherding them and saying, well, if we're in spiritual decline as a nation, our role isn't to step back and leave it alone. Our goal is to engage and actually assume some of the responsibility for that decline because we stopped reaching people. We stopped caring for people outside. As we kind of re-engage that, I think that with prayer can be sort of the seedbed of some revival. If we started by saying, God, we repent.
It's on us.
We kind of ditched the mission in our country, and then we blamed other people, and then we wanted others to fix the problem.
Yeah.
But if it's a spiritual problem, then God's church needs to be leading the charge to see the change happen.
Yeah. Can't be mad at the world when they live like hell if you can't bring them heaven.
Yeah.
You know, it's we have stood back too long, and I appreciate that. A couple of things I want to hit on before we wrap up. Your church became a church planting church. Is that right?
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Just how did that happen, and how did that impact your church?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was always a heart passion.
Yeah.
And we put it in the budget very early on. And so we were just building up money for that as time went on. And then as our church was growing and we were running out of space, we did a capital campaign and we put a portion of that towards planting. The hardest thing was finding planters.
Yeah. Oh.
And what we found is, and what I'm still finding now is, if you're willing to plant in models that aren't exactly the same as yours, it does actually become easier. If you're saying, hey, we might be a Sunday-centric model, but if we're actually willing to do a house church thing or a different language or even different geography, so it might not be in your proximity, but it might actually be in a different, few towns over or another part of the state. Usually that, and you start forming a connection and you just keep saying to your church, we said we were going to do this. We put this on the wall. We talk about this a couple times a year.
Yeah.
And so here's what we're doing to actually make sure it happens. And it goes along with other things we want people serving and giving and in groups and growing in their spiritual habits and living lives of generosity. When we do that as a church, it makes a huge difference. And sometimes I think we're asking people to do things individually that we aren't doing corporately as a church.
Yeah.
So if we want people to reach others and invite others, well, I think one of the church versions of that is planting churches.
Yeah.
So if we want every Christian to be doing evangelism, well, then I would hope that every church would be helping start churches. Now that's going to look different for different churches.
Yeah.
Right? Some are going to be more prayer partnerships, financial partnerships, helping send your old VBS materials off to a church that they can use it the next year or later in the summer. There's so many different ways, but we got to kind of normalize that.
Yeah.
Because most people think there's plenty of churches, but the number of churches per capita in America has gone radically down.
Yeah.
And currently, for every one church that we open in America, 3 are closed.
Wow.
And so no one seems to complain when a new coffee shop opens in town.
Yeah, yeah.
Except the coffee shop owners.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's a scarcity mindset instead of saying there's so many people here.
Yeah.
And different coffee shops serve different coffee, different radio stations reach different people, different churches reach different people.
Yeah.
And so how do we keep having that heart to reach people who don't have a church home? And so that was what was kind of fueling us at the time. And really it was the church that planted us. They were such a big catalyst behind it as well, because when we planted, we actually planted together. So they planted us, and then we planted together. And so we were kind of formed a beginnings of a network there.
Yeah.
And then those 3 pastors met together every month. And it wasn't like you have to do this, this, or this. Different networks are different. But I'm seeing a lot of power come in that is when denominations are there to help encourage and fuel networks that are much closer to the ground of saying, we're going to help start this, going to help start this. And they're really in that context just saying, how do we support the leaders here, which is some time together, training, encouragement, food.
Yeah.
That's something we're seeing is making a huge difference. And that works whether your church is small or big.
Yeah.
So when you start partnering together with other churches to start new churches, it goes a long way.
That makes sense. As you know, I'm the lead planter for Mission Church, but I'm also serving in a part-time capacity with Crossroads Church Partners. So I get to speak to a lot of churches that are wrestling with what's next or how to help, or, I always say, the Scripture asks, "Am I my brother's keeper?" The answer is always yes, you are. It's our responsibility. And I've had a chance to be in churches of all different shapes and sizes, and one of them I went to is right on the edge of the Dakotas on the far west side of Minnesota. It's a town, Canby, Minnesota, itty-bitty little community, and the church there has a couple hundred people there, but we're sitting there and having this conversation, and they said, we're having people who basically they were de-churched, they've disconnected, have started showing up. We're having young families beginning to come into our building with us, starting to worship with us, and they don't really have the framework that how they stayed in church. They're coming back and they've got a lot of questions. And the question asked of me was, how do we start reaching them? And I said, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at your friends who you go to lunch with every Sunday, who you have group with, and say, hey, I see this new family. One of us should step out and build a relationship there. And I said, and it's always best to start with yourself if that's the case. Yeah. Now, I know this guy, he's one of the elders in the church, just a wonderful man, and he's not afraid to speak up. And so he just kind of, his chin kind of came out a little bit, and he kind of smirked, and he's like, "That doesn't always go so well." And I said, you're right. But how do we make a difference unless we step in? Yeah. Unless we change our rhythm and our schedule? And what I'm finding is, and I make this statement, I don't know if it's helpful to you, that the difference between the city context and the rural context is probably just a comma and a zero. It's just a little more people, but same problems, a little different pace, but still people. And when people have compassion, as you would say, when people see others first, when people recognize that evangelism is the first step of discipleship, not the end of discipleship, that when you get to a certain spiritual maturity, when you start playing with those perspectives and postures, it can radically change how your church leads and how it cares for a community. I could not be more thankful than to be a partner in crime or a kingdom partner with you, doing very similar things and getting to share these conversations, because it's invigorating to me that the church, while she may be tired and she may have pulled back a bit, it feels like there could be a sense of a new conviction and a new commitment to the days that are coming, at least in our realms of what we do within the overall church. Doesn't mean it's going to be fixed overnight. Doesn't mean it's not going to be hardship.
Right.
But it is going to be worthwhile. I'll share this story. We have a small group that's kind of been gathering together, and I was pitching to them, hey, I'd love for you to come be a part of this process. And I just talked about, hey, we're going to really try and reach people who may be far from God or not been connected to church a long time, and we're going to prioritize how we engage them and equip them to be a part of this church. We get done, and I'll just be straight with you. I felt like I was pretty good that night. I felt like this is what we're going to say, this is what we're going to do. And this really good friend of ours, she said, because I say, I want to open this for questions. I said, does anybody have any questions? And she says, I don't really have a question. I just want to make a statement. And I said, okay. And she said, this sounds really exhausting. And I just sat there, and I panned the room of everybody who's sitting in there. And I said, it is.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I just, no pain, no gain, insert whatever slogan you want, but those nights when you lay your head on the pillow and you go, it was worth more than just the 9 to 5. It was worth more than just going to a church service. It was. I actually had a chance to engage a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, a gym mate, whatever it is. Yeah. And they asked me about my walk with God.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to open the deepest portion of who I am, my soul, in a significant way. And so let me just say kudos to you, kudos to what the Evangelical Covenant is doing. I'm a big fan of you. Thank you for being on today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure being here, and I'm just praying that the church can continue pursuing the purpose of God.
One last thing, Scott, before we head out of there, I know you're not jonesing to try and promote all these things, but if you've written a book about church planting, you've got relationships with a denomination, and you've got resources probably around you, any of those that you would care to share with us before we wrap up?
Yeah, so the book mentioned earlier is called Supply Lines of Support, and it's just about the types of support that pastors, church planters need in their life to be able to thrive. You can find that on Amazon. And I would say just stay connected, reaching people, and if there's any way I can encourage you or support you in that, reach out.
Sounds good. Well, friends, thanks for joining us today. As always, when we have to step up, step out, step back, whatever it may be, we always want the proximity of our lives to be fueled by the Galatians 5:25 truth. We want to be in step with the Spirit. So stay in step, follow his lead, and let's see where God takes us.